Hi, I'm John Hope. I'm one of the senior sales engineers at Sophos, and I'm here at Virtue Technologies today to talk about synchronized application control. In this session, I'm going to talk about how we can use synchronized security to solve some of the more complex challenges around IT security, and specifically, we're going to look at the application control problem. Now, thanks to a survey that we conducted, we found out that on average, 45% of traffic flowing through even next generation firewalls is simply unclassified. So here's a real-world report from one of our rival vendors, and you can see there's a large amount of general HTTP and general SSL traffic, which isn't really giving the administrators any meaningful information. Here's another example where we can see general networking traffic like UDP, DNS, for example. Again, it's not telling the administrator anything particularly meaningful. Now, I'm not beating up on rival vendors because application control is something which is fundamentally difficult. It relies on security vendors creating application signatures for each of the applications that are out there. And if you think about how many applications you've used just in the course of one day, and then multiply that out across all the people in the world, you can tell there's a huge number of applications out there. And it's a world which is constantly evolving because as software vendors come up with new features and new functions, often this will change the underlying signatures of these applications. And it means that vendors like Sophos have to go back to the beginning and write signatures all over again. So as I said, I'm not beating up on our rivals because application control is something which is fundamentally difficult. However, at Sophos, because we have presence on both the firewall and the endpoint, we can coordinate these two products together in order to solve this application control problem in a very elegant way. So what happens is each time one of our devices generates some application traffic which is going out to the internet, the firewall will attempt to cross-reference that against one of the applications that it already knows about. But if it can't find a match, it will go straight back to the Sophos endpoint and ask it for more information, because that endpoint will intrinsically know really useful information like the path of the application that was launched, and often the nature of the application itself. And it will take all of that information and pass it back to the firewall so that the firewall can learn the application and then classify it. And most importantly, of course, then we can build some rules around it. So here's an example of how this works in the real world. What I'm going to do here is expose the XG Firewall to a brand new gaming application. We're going to classify it, and then we're going to see how we can build some policy around it. So what we're going to do here is have a look at the application control rules. And you can see I've created a policy that says all gaming is blocked. And I've applied to that policy to a firewall rule which all of my users are subject to. So in other words, we shouldn't be seeing any gaming on this network at all. Now, a little bit like a magician doing a magic trick, I'm just going to show you that there's nothing up my sleeve. So here we have the application control widget, and this is where new applications are discovered. As you can see, there's one in there already, but it has nothing at all to do with gaming. So now I'm going to fire up the game. I'm going to play online. The online game is called Hedge Wars. One of the side effects of being a sales engineer is I don't actually have any friends in the real world. So what I'm going to do here is invite some virtual opponents into my gaming room. And once I've dragged those opponents into my room, I'm going to launch the game and start the gameplay. Now, bearing in mind I have a policy in place that says that gaming should be blocked, you can see that things are going quite well up until now. The good news is, from your perspective, I'm not going to show you too much of the gameplay because, frankly, it isn't stellar. But what I've done there is just created enough networking traffic so the XG Firewall can recognize the new Hedge Wars application. And we can see that we found it on one endpoint. Now, if I didn't know the nature of this application, I can very easily take that application path and pop it into the search engine of my choice. In this case, we found out that it's a game, and I found that on one of my endpoint machines. So clearly, I want to put some rules in place around there. So I'm going to classify this newly discovered application as a game, and that means that it's now subject to all the rules and policies that I have around gaming. So if we go back to the online game, we're now going to see a slightly different result. So initially things appear to be going well. I can create a room, but if I now try and invite some opponents into that room, what we'll find is the underlying network traffic required to bring in those opponents is actually being blocked. So in other words, I can't actually create a game and I can't start the gameplay. And if we hop back to the firewall, we can look in the application control logs, we can actually see where that traffic is being blocked. So if we look at the log viewer, and specifically the application control filter, oh, and there is Hedge Wars crashing in the background. Because I've blocked its network access, that application ultimately crashes. But behind there, what you can see is traffic coming from this address internally, going to the outside world, is being blocked because it matches the signature of Hedge Wars. So what we've seen there is exposing the XG to a brand new application and then creating a policy around it and blocking that application. And it really changes the game for our customers, because instead of supporting a limited number of applications simply based on the number of signatures that we have, we effectively support an infinite number of applications, because the moment we see a new one, we can create a policy around that application and we can enforce it.